the Andrew Glowczewski experience. We're going to continue with some concept art. I'm going to try to jump into other things. I'm actually going to be working with like my regular pencil today, just because this isn't going to be the continuation of me like fully rendering out. I've kind of gone through all the concept portraits for this guy. Uh, so here we have the previous page, all the work for him, as well as, you know, the coup de grace at the top of the next page here. And I figure for this page I could do some of the kind of full body concepts, maybe some clothing things. Don't exactly have any ideas. I'm just gonna kind of try to rough it and go through it. And who knows, maybe I'll just draw one square, maybe two squares, depending on the time and how long it takes me to kind of go through these ideas. But with a regular pencil and not planning on doing any colors or anything like that, usually I work a little faster. Sony's State of Play is playing in the background. I'm on Maximilian Dude Live in the background watching it. So I'm gonna let that ride and yeah, let's just get to it.
This game is just fucking Metroid. I've seen a bit of Prey played, but I haven't actually played it.
Also be another best feature. So let's hear him out and not take the shots.
As far as stretched our small legal we make millions a year. You cheap bastards who died, they couldn't go what it is.
Arrogant, cruel, no regard for others. Yeah, that's definitely Alexis. And yup, Alexis just dropped an upgrade to the Carnes's power and a heavy dose of Residium. Time to get the hell out.
You know what? This makes me want to try, and I never gave it a shot just because it came out at a weird time. Control. I never tried Control. I hear a lot of the same thing. I either hear Control is fantastic or it's only okay. A lot of people are like, oh, it's okay, it's alright. Or some people are like, Jim, it's amazing. You know what this game feels like? It feels like it feels like a mid-2000s PC game. Right? Like, remember those weird, like, Austin Powers spy 70s movies? I mean, like 70s action. No one lives forever. Thank you! It feels like you got a copy of, like an old Stalker, No One Lives Forever, and Deathloop. And this is like, it's like the year 2003 or something like that.
What?
Next to the other copy of like MDK and Tron PC.
That's a wrap for today. But we'll get back with more breaking news and updates before you know it. See you soon.
Will ya?
Oh wow.
Will ya? Is that a promise, Sony? Sony, is that a promise?
So I just caught at the tail end of it. Shit.
Sony, do you promise us that you'll be back? 2 weeks?
I was keeping an eye out for it too, man. I'm kind of disappointed in myself for missing it.
Huh? Is there any actual hope that the first party one is going to be near, sort of far away? Not too far away? Well, chat, after this event, I think what's the most important thing to take away from this is that we spend time together, right? That's the most important thing. In an event like this, which showed games, but definitely did not show games in the way we were hoping or maybe expecting.
Oh wow.
The most important part is that we were here together. That's the most important part, that everyone chose to show up at the same time, in the same place, and hope to be excited to be disappointed. And now we are able to be together, disappointed with each other. That's the most important part.
Damn.
No chairs were spun, And
No
the chair in
chairs
my
for
heart
spot.
is absolutely spinning right now. Thank you, chat, for joining. Prime One, happy 2 years. Zyna, Black Mandango, Demo, Blues Play, Red Dead Apple, Broken Venom, Majin Vegeta, Arcuni, Lily Valentine, Shingoki, Stylo Ren, Bert Briven, Jay Dubba Dubba, Chris X Leone, and Rexville. Thank you, everybody. All right, chat. Well, no Final Fantasy 16. And you know what? I was expecting them to hold out on Final Fantasy 16 because that seems like that's something you would want to hype up, you know? To me, FF16 is the same kind of thing that Square Enix did for FF7 back in 2019, where they're like ATB, right? And they had this whole big event and presentation showing you exactly how the game plays and what to expect in the game.
God damn it, man. I cut off my YouTube playlist for this.
There's going to be a lot of like, here's what you get to look forward to. Because what has it been? Has it been literally a year since we've seen FF16 for the first time? I think it is. I think it's been that long. I think FF16 was announced. Was it E3 of last year or was it Tokyo Game Show? It was at some state of play. Yeah, it was around September of last year. Okay. So it was around Tokyo Game Show time. Gotcha. Oh, it was at the PlayStation 5 announcement event. That's right. So it's been we're getting close to a full year since we've seen any updates on that game.
Damn.
So, you did make a video on it? Yes, and I made videos about 400 more videos in that time frame. So you go tell me what I said. Yeah, I'm assuming that's going to get its own big event. And that would make a lot of sense. It would make a lot of sense that they would hold off because that's going to be a big-ass game. It had been a while, and I think it'll still be a couple of months till we get something else. Yo, Cami Sosa, FLJCL, thank you very much. All right, chat. Like the Horizon one? I don't know if we'll get a Horizon one because it's not a first-party game, right? It isn't. It's showing up on Sony platforms first, but it's not going to be a first-party game. Well, let's just hope that there's eventually something for first-party Sony games in the next few weeks. Let's just hope. I think, yeah, the most impressive thing was actually Death Stranding Director's Cut, even though my interest in it is substantially low. I really don't know if I have much interest in going back to the game. But I do think a lot of the upgrades and stuff that they did to it make it look pretty appetizing. It's actually kind of neat that they added all that stuff to it. Yo, Devil May Kyle, happy 3 years.
I'll have to check that out.
Anyway. All right, chat, thank you guys. I'll see y'all later tonight. This was an enjoyable, disappointing experience for all of us together, where we could sit here and dwell in our denial and suck down our copium. But until next time, chat, I'll see you guys later tonight, and we'll stream some other video games that exist, and they're out right now, and are fun to play. Until then, have a good one, dudes. Shine on. I'll see you next time. Peace.
Where's my Death Stranding at? Man, can't believe I just tuned into that too when I started this stream. How disappointing.
Once there was an explosion, a bang which gave rise to life as we know it. Then came the next explosion. explosion. That will be our last.
Sam, I'll be waiting for you on the beach.
Rebuilding America isn't going to get rid of the BTs.
But at least we'll have hope.
I'm a porter. I don't care about connecting anything.
You see, I've come to understand the truth of the Death Stranding.
I'll be waiting for you on the beach.
Okay. Damn, so what the hell am I gonna put on now? Like, I had stuff that I wanted to watch, that I was watching. Young vs. God. Answer to job 1. Jordan Peterson's God. Young vs. God. Don't know if I want to do any of that right now. There we go. Teching 101. Ancient Weapons.
Okay, Barry, just give me a second, but I think I'm onto something here. It's Trojan War, it's Troy. Aha! Right here. Yeah, okay. So, that means, yes, okay, good. It's all lining up. Just one more thing. Come on. Yeah, okay, cool. Oda, you are a clever one for sure. You think you got one over on me, but I think I cracked your little code. Get this, Barry, okay? You know Pluton, right? The ancient weapon that can apparently annihilate an island in one shot. That was the one that Crocodile was looking for at Alabasta, right? Okay. Well, I have discovered that Pluton may in fact be a reference to the Roman god Pluto, who is the lord of the underworld. So right away, you didn't think I was going to get that far, did you? But no, wait, it gets better. It turns out, according to this astrology book, that Pluto is also the name of a planet. Up until 2006, now it's a dwarf planet. But it's a celestial body, right? So everything's starting to really click together. And you want to know something that's really wild? The other two ancient weapons, Uranus and Poseidon, are also named after celestial bodies. Uranus being the planet Uranus, and then Poseidon being the Greek equivalent for Neptune, which I may remind you is an actual planet. It's blue. That's how you know it's a planet, right? Okay. So that means that the world government in One Piece is attempting to create some kind of giant rope or chain or pulley system. I don't exactly know the mechanics behind this. I'm not a physicist. But they're attempting to make some kind of giant object to snare these planets and literally crash them down on the One Piece world. Bam. Solved it. That was what, like a 20 long year plus mystery? Solved right here. Okay, so hey everybody, how you doing? Checking in Barry. I guess there's really no point for me to continue this video since I already solved the mystery of what the ancient weapons are. They're like the literal planets. You know, that's not going to be the case, but if it actually did happen that way, if there were like, there's a Pluto in the One Piece world, there's a Neptune and a Uranus in the One Piece world, right? And it's like, oh no, yeah, the ancient weapons are quite literally just taking those planets and crashing them into the One Piece world. I mean, I'd be sitting here like, well, called it, I guess, but also like, wow, that was kind of on the nose there, but hey, that does count as an ancient weapon, right? So yes, today we are going to be talking about the ancient weapons of the One Piece world, not because we found any new information out about them or anything. They have been mentioned a few times during Wano, most notably during Odin's flashback when he was writing in his logbook near the end, right before he talked about Roger arriving at Laugh-Tale and naming it Laugh-Tale, and he laughed and all that.
Whoops.
He talked about, what are the ancient weapons? What is the will of D? We found out the answers to this and so much more. And I'm going to write it all down in my logbook for anybody to find and read. Here's all the ancient weapons, here's where to find them, here's what they do, and here are the launch codes to Pluton. Hope nobody evil finds this book. I doubt that Odin would have done that, but if he did, I guess Momo now knows, and Yamato now knows, and anybody that reads the book, right? But I doubt he was like super specific, especially if they arrived at Laugh-Tale and they found out how important this was. Odin might have been like, all right, I probably shouldn't just copy this down in a book that can just be found by anybody, right? Because this information can be very, very dangerous on how to find an ancient weapon, right? The last time in One Piece that we got any big information involving the ancient weapons is still at Fishman Island, when we discovered Shirahoshi is an ancient weapon. She is Poseidon, who has the ability to summon Sea Kings, which under the wrong command could destroy the entire world, because they're basically giant sea leviathans that are like covering the entire planet. Most of the One Piece world is sea after all. Now, she doesn't have complete control over this. In fact, she's only able to summon the Sea Kings under moments of extreme duress. Like, I don't think Shirahoshi, even if she, consciously decided, I want to summon an army of Sea Kings, I feel like she couldn't do that just whenever she wanted. She has to, train with the ability first. I feel like she just can't go out in the ocean and be like, army of Sea Kings, Sea King Avengers, I assemble you. It's like there's an Iron Man Sea King, there's a Thor Sea King, and they just all assemble right around her. I don't think that's how it works. I think she has to train with it a bit. She's still able to understand the Sea Kings, which not even other fishmen and merfolk can do that. That's something specific just to Poseidon. She can still hear their voices, but they are also very intelligent creatures, and so it's the whole thing is kind of like there's a time for when this is necessary, a time for when all the Sea Kings need to be assembled together, and they're going to need Poseidon for that. So Shirahoshi, I don't think the time has come really for that yet. And so that was also the arc when Robin was talking to Neptune, and she mentioned the names of all three of them. And so since then, we haven't gotten anything huge. But at Reverie, something very interesting happened. At Reverie, you had the moment with Im-sama in that room of flowers staring at a picture of Shirahoshi, to which Im stabbed a knife through it, okay? And then there was another picture of Vivi that Im was just looking at, and then just kind of walked away. And Im does not speak, so we do not know what's up with that. There was also Luffy and Blackbeard's wanted posters that Im had shredded and cut up into a bunch of different pieces. So shredded Luffy and Blackbeard's wanted posters, both members of the D clan, stabbed a knife through Shirahoshi's, kind of we either have her or we're going to eliminate her or something, and then just kind of stared at Vivi's picture and then just walked away. And then after the Reverie, we know Shirahoshi managed to make it back down to the Ryugu Kingdom at Fishman Island, but Vivi has gone missing. This is interesting. And then there's also the stuff with Sabo apparently dead as well. So there's a theory that's been around for a while, pretty much ever since Fishman Island, and the theory goes, well, since Shirahoshi is a person, a living being that has the ability of the ancient weapon inside of her, maybe all of the ancient weapons are like that. Maybe there's an avatar of Pluton, an avatar of Uranus, somewhere out there in the world, right? They're all living beings, okay? Now, this theory has gotten more traction because of what happened at Reverie. It would make sense, we obviously know Shirahoshi's Poseidon, which would make sense why Im would stab a picture of her, we need to eliminate the mermaid princess because she's an ancient weapon. She could end the world, right? Shirahoshi, of course, wouldn't do that willingly, but, just the fear of it would scare the ever-loving crap out of the world government, right? And so the reason Vivi went missing, perhaps, is because, well, we know that Crocodile was looking for Pluton at Alabasta. Vivi's from Alabasta, and just like Shirahoshi is the princess of the Ryugu Kingdom, and she's an ancient weapon, Vivi being the princess of the Nefeltari family at Alabasta, the idea goes perhaps Vivi is Pluton, all right? Now, there's a few things with this that cause some issues, most notably being that it was mentioned many times in the story Pluton was a battleship. That's what Crocodile called it, it's a battleship that can annihilate an entire island with one shot. Love that quote. But anyway, that statement that Crocodile said was given some credibility once we got to Water 7. Okay, and we got introduced to the Cyclops, CP9. They were undercover there for 4 years looking for the blueprints of Pluton because it was stated that Pluton, this ultimate mega battleship, was constructed in Water 7, hundreds and hundreds of years ago during the Void Century, right? So Cyclops goes in undercover. They try to get it from Iceberg. Iceberg had the fake blueprints. He gave the real blueprints to Frankie. Frankie reveals the true Pluton blueprints at the Tower of Law, and he burns them. But before he burns them, he lifts up a few pages and shows Kaku and Lucci, who, they were Cyberpol agents, but they also worked as top-of-the-line shipwrights at Water 7 for years. So Frankie, just to kind of prove that these are the legitimate blueprints of Pluton, was like, hey, Kaku, Lucci, you guys know what these are. These aren't fakes. I'm going to give you, here's 2 or 3 pages of Pluton, and Kaku and Lucci kind of looked at them like, oh shit, those things are legit. Those are the real blueprints to Pluton, and then Frankie burned them, okay? So that was given some credibility right there, okay? At one point, Pluton, during the Void Century, was an actual battleship with blueprints that was constructed at Water 7, all right? And the way that Kaku and Lucci responded, we don't actually get to see the blueprints ourselves, other than the cover. We don't actually get to see what they look like. But the way Kaku and Lucci responded, it seemed to just be like, okay, those look like actual blueprints for a ship that we're used to, okay? It didn't seem to be like something else, like, I don't know, like we're going Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, like, here are the blueprints on how to make a homunculi that are actually the true Pluton. Now, it didn't seem to be anything weird like that. It seemed like they were recognizing the blueprints as being actual blueprints for a ship that was built at Water 7. So at least at one point, that's what Pluton was, okay? So that kind of pokes a hole in the whole Avatar theory. It's like, okay, it was a warship, so we know that's a warship. We have no idea what the hell Uranus is, but we know that Shirahoshi is Poseidon, okay? So here's an idea. I'm going to throw this out here. Let's start with this, and then we're going to get into some mythology later, okay? So who built the ancient weapons?
Dude, Tekken be going in.
Which basically means you got 2 different factions that could have constructed the damn things, okay? You got the ancient kingdom that Clover talked about, which was apparently the kingdom that ruled the world before the world government, although we're not 100% sure on that. We know it was an ancient kingdom. During the Void Century, it was very, very powerful. It might have had an empire that spanned the entire globe, okay? And then the other side of it was the world government that fought against the ancient kingdom. The world government eventually won and became what it is now today through the 20 kings and the families. And then, those are the descendants of the celestial dragons, right? Okay. So Joy Boy is also involved in there too, but I like to think Joy Boy was part of the faction of the ancient kingdom. Maybe not a main faction. Maybe Joy Boy split off from the ancient kingdom and founded the clan of D, but that's where, Joy Boy originates from, is the ancient kingdom, okay? So you can either say, you can look at this from a bunch of different angles, really. You could say the ancient kingdom built the ancient weapons in order to fight against the world government, because maybe they were technologically advanced, so they built these 3 great weapons in order to fight against the world government because they were trying to take away their kingdom. Or you could say that the ancient kingdom built the weapons before the world government even, became a problem, not as weapons of mass destruction, but as, something like a protection for their own kingdom. Kind of think like, you ever see Atlantis, the Lost Empire, how they had those giant statues surrounding the city that, protected them? Kind of think of something like that, or you ever watch Adventure Time when they go to the island, the human island, and then they have the guardians there, Think of it as something like that. Like the ancient kingdom was maybe really technologically advanced, and they were like, we need to have some kind of, protectors or guardians, and so they created Pluton and Uranus and Poseidon as the guardians, not to be used to take over the world or fight against a threat, but just to have just in case. You know what I mean? Maybe against some sort of cataclysm, like if a meteor was about to hit the Earth, maybe the ancient weapons could be activated and protect the planet. It wasn't meant to be used against other human beings and other, like species that lived on the planet, right? Okay, maybe that was an idea. Or, flip side of that coin, you could say the world government created the ancient weapons. Now, you might say, well, the ancient weapons, the world government's looking for them right now, right? Well, it would make a lot of sense that if the world government made these things 900 years ago or 800 something years ago, and they lost them, then they would be very, very inclined to get their hands back on them again, right? They'd be like, hey, we created these things. We know how devastating they are. If we can get our hands on them again, we lost them, Joy Boy did something and took them away from us, but if we could take them back, then we could truly rule the world, and nobody, Yonko, revolutionaries, supernovas, nothing could stop us if we got this power back again. Think of it the same way as the dragons, where there used to be legitimate dragons flying around the One Piece world, and they were probably connected to the celestial dragons because they're called the celestial dragons. And then at some point the dragons all die off or something happened to them. Maybe that's what happened at God Valley. And there's no more dragons anymore. And because there's no more dragons, that weakens the Tenryubito's overall power, their restraint on the world, right? So they lost their dragons, and maybe they lost the ancient weapons too. And they're like, the world government is still very, very powerful, but they're not as powerful as they were during their heyday, when they maybe had all three ancient weapons for them, and they also had like a legion of army of dragons. Considering Uranos is the god of the sky in Greek mythology, maybe the dragons were Uranos in a sense, but we'll get to that. I'm getting ahead of myself here. So the idea is, okay, that those are a bunch of different possibilities, right? It could have been any one of those things, right? There's also a possibility the ancient kingdom could have been the evil ones, right? The world government maybe might have started off as something a little bit more altruistic, something that may be for the good of humanity, and just warped and changed into the messed up way it is right now, right? Maybe it didn't start off like that. Maybe the ancient kingdom was trying to take over the world, and the 20 kings came together like, we need to stop them, and they made the ancient weapons to stop the ancient kingdom, and then they won, but then power went to their heads, and maybe there was a group like that became the celestial dragons, like the rulers, the kings, got it in their heads that they could rule the world, and they just went overboard with it, right? That's another possibility, right? So, these ancient weapons, if they are actual, like, constructs, like if Pluton really is this giant warship, I mean, I guess it could be hidden away somewhere in the One Piece world in a cave or underground or something. Pluton, Hades, king of the underworld, underground. You can give me a second. I guess it's possible that could be the case. But the world government has crazy resources, and they've had centuries upon centuries upon centuries to find and locate these ancient weapons. If they were just hidden away in a cave somewhere in the Grand Line, I feel like they would have been discovered by now. Now, there are certain islands that the world government just can't get to, or it's very difficult to get to. Lodestar is probably one of them. Laugh-Tail is certainly one of them. So that creates the idea that maybe these ancient weapons are all hidden on Laugh-Tail, like the last bastion where even the world government cannot locate it without the road poneglyphs, right? So that's a possibility. Another way I want you to look at this is if Pluton really is a warship, if it's just been sitting around for 8 centuries, it might not be in the best shape anymore, right? Now, of course, you could always say, like, oh, well, it was built with atom wood, and that never rots, and that never decays. Or it was built with this special metal that is like, ultimate stainless steel, or, platinum, or titanium, or vibranium, or whatever. Vibranium, whatever. It's made out of this super, super special metal. It never rots, it never decays, it never rusts, it never corrodes. And Pluton is sitting somewhere underground in an underground like wharf or something, and it's perfectly operational, right? Well, possibly. I mean, it could be. It's One Piece. But also, remember what Frankie said when Frankie was, building the Thousand Sunny. He was using the best material possible. He was using atom wood to build the thing. But Frankie still said, it's just like it doesn't matter how good the material a ship is. You still need to take proper care of it. You still need a proper shipwright to man the vessel and repair it. It doesn't matter. It can be made out of the best metal, the best wood in the entire world, best fabric for a sail. It needs to be maintained. If you don't know what you're doing, it's going to fall into disrepair, okay? Now, Pluton might be the sole exception to this, but I just want to think about that, okay?
Man, I just had this really dumb idea while Tekking's talking about like ships and stuff like that. And just thinking about the concept of shipping when people ship things, and I was like, oh my god, what if the ship or the vessel or whatever it is like friendship? What if it's like, oh yeah, the ship wasn't a physical battleship, it was a friendship all along. Friendship is the weapon to, you know, defeat evil and all that. I don't know. Silly thought.
What I'm basically getting around to here, and the thing that I kind of thought of when I was doing the centuries video, is what if, at the beginning, all three ancient weapons were physical, like, constructs? Pluton was a battleship. Uranus, let's say, was a giant UFO or an airplane or some kind of, like, flying machine that could bombard the land below. And Poseidon wasn't even originally an actual mermaid. Poseidon was a device that allowed you to like control or manipulate or at least talk to the sea kings. Maybe they start off as actual constructs, okay? But they were made using some sort of void century magic. It was like maybe the combination between magic and technology together created these ancient weapons, and that's what made them so powerful, okay? Steampunk plus Harry Potter. Let's just go with that. Whatever, okay. And so the big epic war happened during the void century. Whichever side created them doesn't really matter in this one particular instance. During this great war, right before the world government was about to win, let's say these ancient weapons were destroyed, their physical like constructs were destroyed, but the essence of them, the magical core, the soul, the aura, whatever you want to call it, went into living avatars, so to speak. And so the avatar of Poseidon became the first mermaid princess. Poseidon, whose name was essentially Poseidon, that's more of a title. I feel like the title is Poseidon, and she probably had a different name back then. And of course, Shirahoshi is her actual given name right now, but her title is Poseidon, Mermaid Princess. Okay, and so that title, that power, would be passed down throughout the generations. Sometimes it would skip a generation; it wouldn't be consistent. Every few hundred years, a mermaid princess would be born with a stored up power of Poseidon inside of her. And so the same thing with Pluton. Pluton was this destructive battleship. The battleship itself was destroyed, but the essence, the magic, or whatever you want to call it, went into another avatar. And if they awaken that power, then they can summon, like, I don't know, they can fire giant energy beams or something like that, okay? And then Uranus, also god of the sky, devastating power in that regard as well. So that's an idea. And, like, if you want a way for the world government to not be able to find these ancient weapons, that's a pretty good way of looking at it, right? Because if they were physical objects that were just in one location for centuries, the odds of them being discovered are pretty high. Even if they're really, really well hidden, the world government, you'd assume, would find them eventually if they just stayed in the same place. But if they were constantly being reincarnated into different avatars throughout the generations, and you have no idea where they are, like you might have a general idea, but you don't even know if they exist, especially if they skip generations. Like, you could have had like the original Mermaid Princess, the original Poseidon, 800 years ago, that made the promise with Joy Boy. When she died, the next Mermaid Princess might have not have been born for 200 years. And then it's like, okay, then she lived, and then she died, and the world government didn't know about it, and so that would be a really crazy good way of hiding the ancient weapons, regardless of who originally made them. Hell, it could have been a thing like, let's say the world government did make the ancient weapons, but then when they won the war and things started getting insane, maybe the people that built the weapons were like, okay, the 20 kings are going mad with power. We need to break these weapons and divide the power across the world because we need to hide them from the kings, right? You could have had the ancestor of Vivi and Cobra, the original king of the Nefeltari family that helped found the world government, could have been like, hey guys, those 19 other kings are going crazy with power. Did you see that Doflamingo guy? Freaking insane. You give me Pluton, I'll hide it at Alabasta. I'm not going to join them, okay? And then we'll give Poseidon to the Ryugu kingdom, the fishermen and the merfolk to watch over that. And then we'll give Uranus, the god of the sky, to the Skypians or the Brickens or whoever was living up there at the time. That could have been a situation where they like knew about them and they gave the weapon to them. I don't think it's coincidence that we have a weapon of the sea and fishermen and merfolk, and then a weapon of the sky, Skypians, Brickens, Shandorians, and then a weapon of, well, a weapon of land? Hold on a second. But that was the idea, maybe that's like the whole thing with the avatars. Now, moving on to a mythology kind of standpoint here, okay? So this is actually very interesting when you look at it from the perspective of how these weapons are named. Now, I should preface this by saying Oda might have just named them that because they sounded cool, all right? But if you look at like the meaning behind them, it's a little weird, okay? So first we have Pluton, all right? Pluton is named after Pluto, who is the Roman god of the underworld, the Roman equivalent of Hades, all right? So that's a Roman god we have with Pluton. Then we have Poseidon. Poseidon is the Greek god, the Greek Olympic god of the sea, of the ocean, all right? So we have a Roman deity and then a Greek deity, and then Uranus, is actually, he is also a Greek god, but not an Olympian. He's a primordial god. He was, to basically break it down, the gods in the Greek pantheon started at primordials, and then the next generation were Titans, and the next generation were the Olympic gods, like Zeus and Hera and Apollo, probably the ones that most people know about, okay? So I'm not going to go way into it here, but the basic idea is it's a little bit scattershot, okay? We have a Roman god, then we have a Greek Olympic god, and then we have a Greek primordial god as the Triforce of these ancient weapons, all right? And I only bring this up, and like I said, it might have just been because maybe Oda thought about naming Pluton Hades, but he just thought, you know what, I don't want to name it Hades, that doesn't sound as cool. Pluton is a pretty cool name for a world-destroying super weapon, so I'm going to name it Pluton, right? Oda might have not put too much thought into it from that perspective, but he might have as well, because this is Oda we're talking about here, okay? So it's a little all over the place. Something that would have made a lot more sense, and if you know a little bit about Greek mythology, you might be with me on this, is can you think of 3 deities that together might have made better names for the 3 ancient weapons that might have connected a little bit better? And you might arrive at the conclusion of Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. Okay? And the reason you might have arrived at that conclusion is because, well, they're all brothers for one. They were all born from Cronus, who was the Titan, he was Saturn, essentially. He was the ruler of the Titans. And then Zeus and his brothers started a war that killed the Titans, and he became the new father of gods. And the idea was Zeus took over the sky. He became the father of gods, the heavens and the earth. Poseidon got the ocean, and Hades ruled the underworld. All right. Also, Hades, fun fact, is often not considered one of the 12 Olympic gods, just how that worked. But at any rate, those 3 are brothers, and they all kind of rule a different aspect. Okay. Poseidon the sea, Hades the underworld, and then you have Zeus, who ostensibly usually is referred to as just like the god of the sky or the god of lightning or whatever, but another term he is called is the god of the heavens and the earth. Okay, he controls both, all right? And that's how it's all divvied up and everything like that. That would have made a lot more sense if the ancient weapons were named Poseidon, Zeus, and Hades, okay? Or even Poseidon, Zeus, and Pluton. That would still like make sense. Zeus is excluded here, and instead we have Uranus, a primordial deity, which is kind of like separate, okay? It's also possible Oda could have just searched, like, who was the Greek god of the sky? And you're going to get Uranus, who's like father sky, born of Gaia, also Gaia's husband, because Greek mythology, that's how that rolls. And that's just what, oh, Uranus, okay, I'll just call it that. I'm not going to put more thought into it. Maybe, possibly, okay? And of course, we have Zeus as another character in One Piece, Zeus being the homie of Big Mom alongside Prometheus and Napoleon, that represents like Zeus the thundercloud, the thunderhead. So he still has the power of Zeus, like he can rain lightning bolts down on everybody. So maybe that's another thing too. Maybe Oda was like, well, I could name the 3rd ancient weapon Zeus to represent the god of the heavens and the earth. And you could still basically have the same idea, but no, I want to name, this giant cloud Zeus instead, Nami's new companion and everything like that. So that's a possibility as well. Just saying it could have worked out a little bit of a different way. And something else that's important to bring up with this theory that maybe, let's say, the ancient weapons represent, each part of the world, and there's an avatar that has the power in them. So Uranus, father sky, that makes sense. Probably involving the sky races in some way, right? Okay. Then we have, Poseidon, underwater, ocean, mermaid princess, makes sense. We assume that Pluton represents the land, so Pluton is a battleship that annihilates the land, okay? But if we're taking this literally, then it wouldn't be the land so much as it would be the underworld, because that's what Pluton or Pluto or Hades rules over, the underworld. And the underworld in Greek mythology, it's not exactly hell. It's not hell either. It's basically the afterlife. It's all of the afterlife. There's the living realm, and then there's the underworld that Hades rules over with Cerberus, his three-headed doggo. And when you die in Greek mythology, regardless of whether or not you were a good person or a bad person, you have to get on Charon's boat to cross Styx into the underworld, into Hades' domain, and then you are judged, and if you were a good person, your time in the underworld is pretty chill. If you were a bad person, your time in the underworld is pretty shitty. And there's different, sections of the underworld and all that. And in fact, the deepest level of the underworld is actually Tartarus, which is the ancient prison that houses the Titans that were defeated by the Olympians. Tartarus also being one of the original primordial gods that was created out of chaos, alongside Gaia and Nyx, who is night, right? Okay, so that's the underworld, right? Now, in the One Piece world, we've yet to really explore any concept of an underworld or an underdark or some kind of other realm, subterranean realm underneath the planet. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And I give you, for that reason, King! Not that King. There we go. This
Oh
King.
shit.
King.
Oh shit. Now he's on to something.
One of the few races, one of the three
Now
races
he's on to
that
something.
exist in Totland. We know giants are another one. We do not know what King's race is, and we do not know what the other one that she was referring to, okay? Skypian is probably another one, but King looks a little different from the Skypians that we know. He has black wings, and he also covers his entire body, head to toe, with that BDSM gimp suit, like leather and latex or whatever, so we don't know what he actually looks like, all right? And he can control fire to boot. He's King the Wildfire. He just controls fire, all right? So we don't know what he looks like, and he has black wings, and he controls fire. A lot of people, me included, go with the idea, what if he's some kind of demon or devil race, right? He's like maybe a fallen angel race or some kind of demon race that still has wings, but, comes from like a subterranean realm or the underworld or whatever. And they can control fire because they're like demons or whatever. I also like to throw out the idea that maybe they lived in some kind of volcanic, like subterranean city, like in RuneScape, where you fight Testo Jad and everything like that, like the fight pits. That would be really cool, like an obsidian city with like magma rivers running through it or whatever. That would be really sweet. You could see King living in that sort of environment, right? So like I said, a lot of that is headcanon. We do not know. But I was just thinking, a lot of people assume Pluton has to deal with the land, and that must be where it's hidden. But it's like, hey, if Poseidon is the god of the ocean, and Poseidon in One Piece is literally at the bottom of the ocean, and Uranus is the sky deity, and it's probably located on the moon, to be honest with you, the moon, or at least in the sky, and those are taken literally, why not take the name Pluton or Pluto literally and just say, no, it's not on the land of One Piece, it's in the underworld of One Piece. It's under the ground. There's a subterranean city down there somewhere. How do you gain access to it? I have no idea. That might be another reason why King thinks that he's like the last one of his kind, or Big Mom called him like the last one, right? Maybe there are like an entire other species down there that are like King's people, however he got cast out or something, or he got lost, and I don't know, a volcano erupted and King popped out of it, or he's Rodan essentially, so that makes sense because Rodan out of the volcano, that's the movie, right? So what if King got, cast out of his kingdom, and so he joined up with Kaido or whatever, and they just assume that he's the last one of his kind. But there could be others down there as well.
Of his kind.
There's no way to get back. King doesn't know how to get back to his kingdom or whatever, right? There's a lot of kings in that sentence, but could be something like that too, right? So yeah, it's just one of those things where we're starting to speed up the story. Wano's going to be ending soon. And it's just starting to look into, we're probably going to find out about the ancient weapons, within the next few years. I'm trying to piece together some stuff. Here's another thing, too, I wanted to bring up. Robin knows about the names of all of them, all right? How did she find out the name of Uranus? Because the only way that you would find out the names of these ancient weapons is on poneglyphs, because that's the only place they exist anymore, right? And so she found out about the name of Poseidon at Skypea, and she found out the name of Pluton at Alabasta. She had to find another poneglyph at some point during her travels, and there was a poneglyph at O'Hara that she would have read. Maybe that's the one that said Uranus. When she was traveling on the run from the government, she also discovered probably multiple poneglyphs on her journey, because she was running from the government for over 20 years, right? So at some point there, she probably might have, stumbled across at least one or two other poneglyphs. There was also a poneglyph we saw that Odin looked at during his flashback, not the road poneglyph, just a regular old poneglyph on some island. This might have been the same poneglyph that Robin saw here. It could be the same one, right? So Yeah, it's just interesting. I want to know about like really where all these point to, or if there's significance on like, okay, so in the Sky Islands there's a poneglyph that points to Poseidon. But remember, that poneglyph wasn't originally in the sky. That was originally in the golden city of Shandora on the land that pointed to Poseidon underground, underwater. And then Pluton, you know what? It's still a little ambiguous to me whether or not Pluton is actually hidden in Alabasta itself, or the poneglyph just spoke about where to find it. You can look at it two ways. You could say that because it did say the poneglyph that Robin read at in the tomb of the kings in Alabasta, it really did say something about Pluton. She just lied to Crocodile, right? So it could have said like, go to this island and you will find Pluton, or it could be like, you know, take 2 steps to the left, there's a secret stairwell, and that'll here's how to activate it. It's right underneath your feet under the tomb. That might have been the case too. That's a little bit ambiguous, but yeah, just some stuff to think about involving the ancient weapons. Are they actual constructs? Are they avatars? Were they constructs at one point? And this whole thing with the underworld, I'm kind of going full speed into this because I really like this idea that there's like another realm of the One Piece world we've yet to explore yet. And the reason it's never been mentioned is because as far as the people of the One Piece world go, just like the Sky Islands, it's purely mythical. It's like, Sky Islands, people living on clouds, that's stupid. Next thing you'll say is there's some kind of subterranean city 30 miles under my feet. Ha ha! I think it makes sense. So then we'll have an underworld, then we'll have the ocean, which there's like, you know, different islands where fishermen and merfolk live on the bottom of the sea, and then the land, you know, sea level, where we have a bunch of crazy stuff there, and then we have the sky, and then we have the moon. Also, talking about Uranus a little bit here, because I didn't really talk about that too much, because we don't really know a lot about Uranus. I like a lot of people were like throwing out Momo, like Momo and Zunisha might be the god of the sky in that regard. Considering once again taking it literally, I feel like it should be a Skypian or somebody that came from the sky. So the two possibilities are Eneru. Eneru might, you know, fulfill the destiny and become the next, you know, Uranus by activating the ancient weapon or creating it on the moon and then going back down to the earth, and then boom, there you go. There's Uranus for you right there, and freaking Eneru is the living deity of that, and that could actually spin it in a way where he just had a god complex at first, but no, Eneru is now a legitimate deity by having this power. That could be a concern. The other person that is talked about is Isa. The little girl that had the observation hockey that Luffy ran into that was a Shandorian, also might fulfill that prophecy as well. And yes, the Shandorians that lived at, you know, Shandora were blasted into the sky by the knockup stream, but they all came from the moon originally. The Shandorians, the Skypians, and the Brickens all came from the moon, and the Brickens and the Skypians settled in the sky. Shandorians made it to the surface where they created Shandora, then it got blasted into the sky by the knockup stream, because it's a little confusing, because they all have wings. So it's just like, okay, but why did the Shandorians have wings if they lived on the surface? It's like, well, because they all came from the moon, and it just got blasted back up. So it's a little confusing, but that's basically what happened. So anyway, yeah, that's the video. I hope you guys all enjoyed. And now, you know what it's time for. That's right, Ant Facts. Oh, yeah. So today, we're going to be talking about Nothomyrmecia. And this is actually a critically endangered species of ant that currently only resides in southern Australia and only a few very specific kind of places, okay? This is a very old ant. It's referred to as the dinosaur ant or the dawn ant. This is what it looks like. Just in appearance alone, looks very, very different from other ant species. The face is very narrow. The mandibles are very interesting. They make very small colonies.
Yo, where's my water?
About the leafcutter ants that work together with the fungus that had like 8 million in their colony at like maximum. Well, when it comes to these dinosaur ants or these dawn ants, they only have a colony of maybe only a few hundred, if that. Sometimes more than one queen will create the colony, but then after the colony is established, the queen will leave and go to some other place and start another colony. And so, yeah, critically endangered, meaning that they're one step shy of being extinct in the wild. It goes critically endangered, then extinct in the wild, and then, you know, the only surviving members are in captivity, and then just purely extinct, just gone forever. There's no surviving, you know, members that we know of, okay? And so because of that, there's a lot of conservation efforts to save this ant in southern Australia. There might be more, you know, located in that area. We just haven't discovered it yet. But yeah, that's basically the deal with the dinosaur ant. Very interesting, critically endangered, and I hope they can make it through. So yeah, they even make like a little sculpture here of the ant down in southern Australia. So that's cool. If you live in Australia, let me know if you've ever heard of this species or if you've ever actually seen them. That would be really cool. But anyway, yeah, that's this episode of Ant Facts. Thanks for watching, and thanks for seeing the video, everybody. It's always fun to talk about mythology on the channel. I hope I didn't go too overboard with that, but yeah, just think about it. Mythology, along with geography and ant facts, makes up really the Triforce of our world. Later, everybody.
So stupid. Let's see. There we go.
Duke Energy is ready to help you through this year's hurricane season. We're investing in a stronger, more resilient grid and technology that keeps you up to date. It's all part of building a smarter energy future.
Only one who saw the head of the living tribunal in Loki episode number 5. There's no possible way I was the only one. And I'm not so arrogant as to believe that I was. That'd just be a real crappy thing to do. So, the head of the living tribunal, among a bunch of other things we got over the course of the episode, this was amazing. Episode number 5 was awesome. The head of the living tribunal, which we'll talk about here in a second because that's probably the single biggest thing to come out of the episode. The Thanos copter, which is really, really cool. Fun fact here. So back in the day in Marvel Comics, Spider-Man, of course, as you guys know, has been a face of the company for a long, long time. But in order to make comics more accessible to little kids, Marvel released a Spider-Man-centric line of comics called Spidey Super Stories. And these basically focused on Spider-Man from like a kid's perspective, like just writing it in a more toned-down, fun, oftentimes goofy sort of thing. And there was a point where Thanos came to Earth in pursuit of the Cosmic Cube, got it for a brief second, but during that time, he was piloting what was called the Thanos copter. That's the same story you've probably heard of where Thanos gets arrested by the cops in the end. That story was kind of silly, but it was also really, really funny. I don't think we ever covered it on Comics Explained, and if we didn't, then we probably should. But we also got the helmet of Darren Cross from the first Ant-Man movie, of course, him looking like a giant man, so presumably that wasn't supposed to happen. But we got a lot of cool little tidbits here, and a lot of the things that we saw were not necessarily things that were of any real major significance. Some of the things that we saw included stuff like Thanos' ship Sanctuary, we saw a shield helicarrier, little things along those lines. Small little things that kind of popped up here and there, which is a cool little sight to see. But the head of the Living Tribunal is probably the biggest thing to come out. And here's the reason why. When the Living Tribunal was first referenced in Doctor Strange 1 with the staff of the Living Tribunal, it was easy to chalk it up and say, okay, cool, it's just a little Easter egg, right? They named their staff after a really powerful character. To see the head of his character, even if it's only in a statue form, that's big. Right? Because what it means is there were other beings out there that recognized the validity of the Living Tribunal. When one society recognizes something, it's possible they made it up. When a second society recognizes the same thing, it's because they existed. And that's the way it works with the Living Tribunal. So why does this matter that the Living Tribunal's head appeared in Loki? Well, outside of the fact that we know he was real, we know that seemingly somewhere along the line, either he continues to exist or he was destroyed. It's kind of wild. The Living Tribunal is basically the walking, talking embodiment of the multiverse. But more so than that, the Living Tribunal was the result of a mistake that was made by the One Above All. So, a little bit of history here. Originally, the One Above All created what was called the first firmament, or the first universe. And basically, it was a singular universe that was essentially sentient. Now, the whole idea behind this was that the first universe got lonely, so it created life in the form of beings called Asplins. And the Asplins were wholly faithful to the first universe, in the sense that when they created planets, they created solar systems and galaxies, stars, all that kind of stuff, life on different worlds. They would approach the first universe to seek its approval, and if the first universe approved, they would continue on. If it disapproved, they would destroy it and start over again. Some of these aspirants defected, and the reason why was because they believed the first universe should learn to understand change and growth and mortality, and that the universe itself should die and then be reborn, and basically grow from its previous death into its new death, and kind of expand onward from there. These ones who defected started calling themselves the Celestials, and this led to what was effectively a holy war between the aspirants and the Celestials. And this led to the Celestials basically taking that opportunity to defeat the aspirants and then destroying the first universe in the process. Technically, the death of the first universe was a byproduct. It shattered into an infinite number of pieces, and that's where you got the first multiverse from. But the thing about this is that the Living Tribunal was created because the One Above All realized its mistake with the first universe. It didn't need a sentient universe to govern everything. It needed a non-partial judge to basically overlook everything. And so the Living Tribunal was created to kind of maintain different laws. Now, how those laws have been invoked over the years have kind of changed to a degree, right? Sometimes it's maintaining magical balance. Hence the first reason why he appeared when Zom showed up. Zom was basically a villain that was way more powerful than Dormammu, and it took the Living Tribunal defeating Zom to basically help Doctor Strange save the day. But you also saw the Living Tribunal fulfilling other roles across Marvel. So it's not really a consistent thing, just kind of bouncing around from place to place. But the important thing here is that the Living Tribunal is the judge of the multiverse, basically making sure that the multiverse stays in its form, that it stays organized and structured. The fact that the TVA is doing what it's doing right now, and the Living Tribunal is not intervening, means only one of two possibilities. Either what the TVA is doing is supposed to happen, is the natural order of things, or the Living Tribunal is dead. I'm inclined to believe the latter of the two, because according to Sylvie and everything that we've seen over the course of the show, the natural state of the multiverse is to be a place of chaos, where universes are being born and destroyed and all that kind of stuff over and over and over again, and even the multiversal cycle, right? The multiverse itself will be destroyed and then reborn at a future point in time. It's just the natural order of things. So normally, under those circumstances, you would expect the tribunal to step in, basically wipe the TVA out of existence, and then call it a day. But doesn't seem to be the case. But again, looking at this episode, there's a really, really cool thing that I noticed here. So if you go and you look at the trailer for the very, very first episode, and really the trailer for the show as a whole, there's this scene, really a couple scenes, but there's this scene where Loki is sitting on like this gigantic throne. Now the scene that we get is basically him standing up and then walking towards the camera, which is most likely walking towards Loki himself, right? The Marvel Cinematic Universe version of Loki. And I say that because in the following scene, you have Loki from the MCU who's wearing the exact same outfit he was wearing at the end of episode number 5. So seemingly it's when they enter the castle, but he's only walking by himself. And so there's only a couple things here. Either he and Sylvie split up, which really seems to make sense, or Sylvie was destroyed somewhere along the line. I don't know if that's really the case. Regardless of the situation, this giant castle that they're in at the end of episode number 5, this is pretty wonky, man, because you can take it in a couple different ways. One, you can consider it being Castle Kang, but we haven't really seen Castle Kang that many times in Marvel. Instead, what you actually end up seeing instead is basically the castle of Immortus, a place called Tenebrae, and it actually exists in a land called Chronopolis, which is essentially a place in limbo, technically. It's not really a part of any of the time streams. So in Marvel Comics, quick explanation here, you got limbo in a couple different forms. You have limbo from like the character of Magic, Ileana Rasputin, which is basically like this almost hellscape dimension, and then you've got true limbo, which is a place that exists outside of time and space, and that's usually where Immortus resides. The idea of him being there is to be able to manipulate and really look after the whole time stream and change things as he wants to. We'll talk about why that matters here in a second. But basically, the look of the castle is not really the look of Tenebrae. It looks like Castle Doom. And so there's a lot of things going around that it's Victor Von Doom who resides inside this castle. I don't think it is. I don't think that's actually what's going on. I think it's just the castle of possibly Kang the Conqueror or Immortus or whoever. But basically, the occupant inside that castle is a future variant of Loki, or some variant of Loki.
Yeah, I think it's a Loki.
In that particular scene that we saw,
Everything's been about Loki in this show.
it looks like in his reality,
Kind of makes sense for it to be a Loki.
Maybe he killed
Especially how underwhelming all the revelations have been in these shows.
We don't really know how we get from point A to point B. We haven't really seen him yet. We haven't really seen that scene yet. So I have no idea if this is accurate or not. But that's just kind of my feeling there. But the reason why I think that version, that this is Loki inhabiting this castle, and Loki is operating under the moniker of Immortus, is because it fits into what Loki would do, right? Remember earlier in the series, one of the things that Owen Wilson said is that Loki stabs everybody in the back. But he always stabs people in the back. And that's one of the things to notice. Over the course of the show, and that's the reason why the variant Lokis are so important, over the course of the show, Sylvie was seemingly just kind of doing her own thing, right? She would cross whoever she needed to cross. The mission was the only important thing. It wasn't until she encountered the main cinematic universe version of Loki that she started to turn over a new leaf and started to become what we would call a traditional good guy. The same thing for the variant Lokis, right? Like, they were cutthroat. They were just, I mean, I guess they saved Loki, but it's one of them, right? So he's like, we survived. So I guess it makes sense they would save themselves. But regardless, like, even then, they were like, you can go and do your own thing if you want to. Like, whatever, man. We're not going to worry about it. You see all the variant, like, vote Loki and all that kind of stuff? They're all literally mired in betrayal, right? That's the whole thing about Loki. They always betray each other. Now, the reason why this matters is because in Marvel Comics, the origin of Immortus is that he was a version of Kang the Conqueror, and that version of Kang had grown tired of being in battle all the time, right? Like, constantly trying to conquer the time stream, defeat the timekeepers, failing over and over and over and over again. And so ultimately he was offered a deal by the Timekeepers to basically be the one that would help ensure that their future comes into existence, whereby the Timekeepers exist instead of their evil alter counterparts, the Time Twisters. And so Immortus was given like this 70-century long period of time, right? Basically ruling from 3000 BC to 4000 AD, and then just kind of monitoring the time stream and sometimes fulfilling the charter of the Timekeepers, other times fulfilling his own goal and his ambitions. Now, let's kind of apply this to the character of Loki. Let's replace the idea of him trying to face the Timekeepers and defeat them over and over and over again. Let's replace that with like trying to conquer Asgard. Or let's replace that with trying to conquer a universe, or whatever the case is. Whatever his grand purpose is, right, his glorious purpose, constantly failing to achieve that purpose. And so let's say he's snatched up by the TVA, he's brought into the Timekeepers, and the Timekeepers are like, actually, you can work for us. You can fulfill your glorious purpose by working for us, right? That'll be the role that you play. And then Loki, being the great betrayer that he is, he killed the Timekeepers, right? Like, destroyed them, and then in turn took over. And maybe that it has nothing to do with the multiversal war, that he didn't start it, he wasn't the one who fought in it, he just capitalized on the aftermath of it, right? The fact that like the Timekeepers had really created a sacred timeline, and they were trying to keep alternate realities from coming into existence. And this was an alternate reality version of Loki who was supremely adept in manipulation, and then took out the Timekeepers, and then basically now rules at the end of time, and just kind of allows the Timekeepers to do their thing. Only one who saw the head of the living tribunal in
Oh,
Loki
hell
episode
no.
number 5. There's no possible way I was the only one. And you basically have the empire of the TVA, for lack of a better word. Then you have the empire of Kang, and then you have the empire of Alioth, and things like that. So Alioth was basically the first being to break away from a linear progression throughout the timeline, which is to say, being born, living some number of years, and then dying. And then in doing that, basically managed to find a way to kind of permeate the entirety of the timeline and actually create branching off universes. What this means is that the multiversal empire of Alioth is colossal, about 3 times as big as Kang's. And in fact, Alioth is so immense in terms of its form and function, the fact that anything that goes into it basically gets absorbed and dies, that Kang actually doesn't want to have anything to do with Alioth. And in fact, Kang avoids Alioth, right? So think of Alioth as like the south side of Chicago. It's basically what it is.
Damn.
But the whole point here is that Alioth is a force to be reckoned with. Now, seeing the depiction in the Loki TV show as what's basically a guard dog at the edge of time is interesting. Honestly, I'm not so partial to Alioth that I'm upset about it. It doesn't really matter to me. It's kind of intriguing, but at the very least, it's a cool thing to see this wildly obscure character that's appeared maybe 15 times over the course of Marvel Comics being thrown into the Loki TV series, because again, it really all points the finger towards Kang. Now, speaking of Kang, and really more Immortus than Kang, here's the theory that we have. Now, I like the idea of this version of Loki basically being Immortus because it tidies everything up, right? Time travel is confusing enough. I mean, look at how many people were confused and baffled by the events of Avengers Endgame, right? For the most part, people who are watching these shows and these movies are not people who are well versed in how this stuff works in comics. They're soccer moms and hockey dads, right? They're just sitting down and watching this because it just looks interesting. And you have to cater to that audience. And so I think bringing in Immortus as a version of
Something's bugging me about this. His legs look funky.
Escapades, they all kind of end up becoming more or less the same person, but they're not really the same person. They're a little bit different because they exist at different points in time. That'll confuse the hell out of people. I think a far simpler approach to this is to say this variant version of Loki is basically going by the moniker of Immortus, just operating under the name of Immortus. Now maybe it got it from Kang because that's the name that Kang used at one point over his lifespan, but the reality is invoking someone like Kang from the Marvel Comics landscape, kind of adapting it as a one-to-one, would confuse the hell out of people. It confuses me at times, and I've been reading comics for 25 years, so like imagine what it's going to do to the average person. Kang is a tough nut to crack, so I think separating Immortus from Kang is probably the best decision that Marvel could make. I don't know. It's interesting, man. I love this. This is the crazy thing. We're 5 episodes into this show, and I still don't fully know exactly how things are gonna play out. Usually you know by the time you get to this point, right? Usually you know how things are gonna play out. It's the same thing with WandaVision, right? By the time you got to like the 8th episode, you're like, okay, so we pretty much know how this series is gonna end. Right? We know how things are gonna unfold. She'll become the Scarlet Witch. She'll take off into the multiverse in order to probably save her kid's life. Like, I mean, you kind of knew what direction things were gonna go in. In this, I have no idea, man. I have no earthly clue. The one big takeaway that I think is going to happen from this is that if we go with the idea that the TVA really is fulfilling its role, which it looks like it is because of the Void, that they're actually pruning the timeline of things that aren't supposed to be there and keeping the timeline on the straight and narrow, that the TVA will be destroyed at the end of the series. And with nobody keeping the timeline in check, it'll descend into absolute chaos. And so while that will lead into Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness, and I don't think it's the definitive reason why the Multiverse of Madness is happening, I think it's one of the reasons why it's happening, right? I think the idea, the plot of Doctor Strange 2 and the Multiverse of Madness taking place is just a bunch of things happening all at the same time, right? Like multiversal imbalance, all just kind of happening at the same time, right? Like the inmates are running the asylum, is essentially what it would be. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section. I've rambled enough. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.
And this is a breakdown of Loki Episode 5, Journey into Mystery. Of course, a nod to the original comic run that introduced Loki and Thor, fitting for an episode filled with Easter eggs to Marvel Comics, but also enough hatches, Egyptian icons, and smoke monsters to haunt me from the series that got me into this kind of stuff, Lost. Which hopefully Loki will do better than with expectation management. Hey, let's break down this episode frame by frame for all the interesting hidden details, because this episode's got a lot of them. Hey, and a reminder that you can get our Loki-inspired merch at newrockstarsmerch.com, like this Loki Out of Time shirt, which directly supports us here at New Rockstars. We open on the TVA timeline screen with location showing Boromir, the planet that held the Soul Stone Infinity War in Endgame, Seoul, South Korea, Zimbabwe, and Oak Island, Nova Scotia. Maybe a nod to the Oak Island treasure, the theorized Knights Templar treasure believed to be buried on Oak Island, that people think might contain the Holy Grail, Ark of the Covenant, Shakespearean manuscripts. And the camera nauseatingly flips upside down and then rotates as the chronomonitor room back wall just dissolves into the timekeeper elevator doors, which then dissolve into their chamber, where we now reverse the rotation so the frame rotates counterclockwise toward the severed timekeeper android head. A true journey into mystery this opening shot is, reflecting how each of these settings have been in their own ways smokescreens for some deeper truth beyond them. Much like how the final shot of this episode is yet another literal smokescreen, peeling back to reveal some other truth beyond, but even that might contain another secret twist that I'll talk about later. Notice how the series keeps focusing on that one central timekeeper more than the other two, almost as if that android could be a primary one, specifically designed in its creator's image. We enter the Void, the TVA's supposed dumping ground. We pass the Lighthouse of Alexandria, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Now, this void also contains the Pyramids of Giza, another ancient wonder, and with the Hanging Gardens of Babylon showing up in Eternals, that makes 3 out of 7 wonders in the MCU this year. This lighthouse also bookends the Lit Tower, which maybe is the lighthouse in the final shot, and trailer footage tells us that that setting has a library inside it, perhaps another source of illumination. Next on the left is Doctor Strange's Sanctum Sanctorum. I would not want to live in a reality with those guys pruned from it. Maybe there was some past conflict between the Sorcerer Supreme and the TVA over who really should monitor the multiverse. Now, as we pass Avengers Tower, we realize written on it is not Avengers or A or Stark, but Kang, as in Kang Enterprises, the company Tony Stark sold this tower to in the comics. It's run by Mr. Gryphon, revealed to be Kang the Conqueror. The latest clue that Kang could be our man behind the curtain after all. To the left is another building. If you look closely at the top of it, is labeled Ken Park 2018, it looks like, suggesting this whole void could be made up of pieces of histories that Kang has conquered, similar to his kingdom of Chronopolis. 2018 would be right after the snap, which could be when Kang Enterprises moved into that tower. Notice how trotting around on the ledges are these indigo bird things with their spherical heads that hover over their necks. They run on 5 little hot dog feet all over the void. No clue what these are, but this episode was written by Rick and Morty writer Tom Kaufman, who wrote the Season 3 Fruity Land Clone Death episode with a similarly bonkers pocket reality filled with goofy creatures and an immature exile who crowns himself king. And then finally, some answers.
What is this place? Where are you? Why here? Prison of void, that's alive. Where is lunch?
No, Goliath is a trans-temporal entity from the Marvel Comics who takes the form of this kind of carnivorous smoke. He rivals the time empire of Kang the Conqueror, and Kang uses the entity of Tempest to trap Goliath in eternal battle so that Kang can expand his rule. And it just so happens that Ravonna Renslayer is also part of this 1993 storyline. So I'm wondering if in this case, Kang may be using Goliath as a guard dog as he works behind him to assemble his kingdom. Renslayer explains,
when we prune a branched reality, it's impossible to destroy all its matter. Basically, the branched timeline isn't reset, it's transferred to a void at the end of time.
Yeah, Renslayer is appealing to the law of conservation of mass that says matter can neither be destroyed nor created, only transferred. Not that the laws of physics really matter that much on the show, but Renslayer claims to not know who created the TVA, and based on her later scene with B-15, she truly could be a memory-wiped variant, same as the rest of them. But this being Renslayer, the primary love interest in the comics to Kang, I wonder if she could be a teacher or an admin from that FDR high school that caught the eye of a young Nathaniel Richards, maybe even a teacher that he had a crush on, who once he grew up to be Kang, he went back in time to trap her in this phony temporal law office so that she would catch the bullies and class clowns who threatened his utopia. Back in the Void is a three-masted wooden ship with lifeboats on the deck. This could be the Santa Maria, Columbus's flagship that struck a reef off the coast of Earth.
All right. I think that's going to be it for this one. Had a little bit of fun with it. Let's see. What's today's date? It's the 8th. So yeah, some really quick sketches. I'll probably end up like filling up the rest of this page with sketches like these, just kind of going over some ideas with the overall uniform and clothes. With it like kind of like this jumpsuit thing where he takes the top half off and ties it up like a belt. Has these pockets in them. So it's something like a hoodie. And yeah, wearing a jacket, has the jacket folded up here, taking it off there. So whenever I'm kind of going with the motif of this guy's collar always being popped. I always talked about it, so like big collars on this guy. I like it. And yeah, I just wanted to do something quick. I know it's been a while, I've been on and off with the streams, but I'll be back on. And yeah, hopefully this is cool. You guys enjoy these just more pencil sketches and getting these things out of the way. And you know, I keep flipping back to these pages because if you look at this jacket and look at these two, that's what is kind of going on here. You know, with like what could he possibly be wearing? What could he be doing? Like, how do I make this work across the entire body? What's the idea there? So it's like, all right, here's the idea, and now here's the execution. I don't need to color them. I don't necessarily need to ink them. I don't need to do any of that stuff because all that work has already been done for the most part. So yeah, and then just adding these little sport stripes down the sides or something like that, which is just a fun detail for something. Makes it a little more uniform, things like that. I think he looks super badass here. I love this look, you know what I mean, with the collar and the hat. Almost looking like a flying saucer because he has the visor so you can't even see his face. Things like that, like it. I just really like it. I especially like the boots over just like the regular shoes. And yeah, man, I think that's gonna be it. That will be it for this one, man. So I'm G Mr. Drew. That's at G Mr. Drew on all social media. You can follow, like, and subscribe. Links are in bio, along with my website, gmrdrew.art. Check it out. And, you know, I got merch on there, and you can contact me, anything like that. I'm on Patreon and Fiverr as well if you want characters, sketches, things like that. You want me to do work like this. You can check out my Patreon and see what kind of deals I have on there. It's super cheap, super affordable. And Again, starting at $1 a month just for regular support. But if you want a portrait, they start at 3, going in anywhere up to, I believe, 30. And obviously, depending on the tier that you go for, is gonna get you a bigger portrait from me. I've been getting some ideas for merch and things like that, and I'm gonna want to be executing those soon enough. So maybe even before I move forward, I'll take this page and actually do work on a piece that's been haunting my brain for like 2 years now. And I think I actually have the idea that I want to go with to actually make that shirt happen. And yeah, it'll be one for the Big Drip store. So yeah, go check out my merch page on my website, gmrdrew.art, and you'll see the Big Drip store. And there's only a few items in there, I think. And yeah, man, I'm thinking about adding one more to it. And then yeah, obviously there's a couple other stores there. So something for everybody, and always adding to it. And would love to speak to people more about, kind of what do they think, what would they like to see, what do they think, like as far as like the items that I have available, what could I make, and things like that. But anyways, that's going to be it for this episode of the Andrew Glowczewski Experience, episode 193. Again, just doing some character concept stuff. You watched it, and I thank you and love you for watching it. Peace.